Transformation is really difficult. So you literally need to say, this is our objective, this is where we're heading, and nothing will stop us. There's a sense of purpose and mission, but more importantly, a sense of movement that people can belong to and join and go, I am a part of that movement. I have raised my hand.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. Charlene Li, I'm so excited. Thank you, my friend, for joining me today on Selling with Social.
I am so excited to be here with you. So let's get to it.
Absolutely. So it's been a long time. I know you are amazingly crazy busy and someone who we at Vengreso look to when we're looking for great information and to help guide direction. And so I'm super excited with the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is all around developing as leaders in this new emerging technology space, but more importantly, in the digital social world. There's been some massive seismic changes that have happened over the last few years and still coming. And so we're going to be talking about that today. But before we get into this topic, Charlene, first off, you are a best-selling author. If I'm not mistaken, is it 3 books?
3 major books, 2 minor, so 5 total.
Oh, I missed the other 2 minors. That's right. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've got something on the cusp. Am I wrong?
I am. I'm working on another book, hopefully to launch it this fall. Just got to finish writing it.
Fantastic. I'm so looking forward to that. And so we're going to be talking hopefully you'll share with us some cool things from the book that's going to be upcoming.
Exactly. I'm hoping we can dig into it a little bit more.
All right. Very good. Very good. And of course, you also are one of the most well-known principal analysts at Altimeter, a profit company organization, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And you have an amazing track record, an amazing following on your thought leadership. And so I'm super excited to have you here with me. Did I miss anything about your background that our listeners should know?
No, other than just so you know, I also love to sell too. So
love to sell? Is that what you said?
I love to sell.
Oh, we've got an analyst who loves to sell. Now, I'm excited about that. So I want to come back to that one and have you tell me more. But before we do that, do us a favor. Tell us something about yourself that nobody would know just by looking at your social profiles.
Well, they may get a hint of it if they look at my activity stream because I love playing games. I love puzzles. I love logic things. So I'm constantly on my phone playing games.
What's your favorite game?
I have to say there's one called Human Resource right now that is all about logic and programming. So it's a way to teach programming. And I'm almost done with them in the last 2 levels, and I cannot for the life of me figure it out. So I literally tell my family, go away. I'm going to be playing this game for the next 7 hours so I can finish these 2 things.
So you're like the kid who's playing the Xbox who wants to finish the level and they're trying to get to the final chapter there and they're just like so intent into finishing this thing. You just like everything else stops. Yeah?
Exactly. My family knows when it comes to my games, I'm serious. Leave me alone. Leave the door shut. Do not interrupt me.
I love it. I love it. That's great to know about you. So, and what's the name of the app you said?
It's called Human Resource.
Human Resource.
Like, a person who goes to all the different levels, climbs a corporate ladder, and has to meet all these different challenges that are kind of stupid, but it teaches you programming.
So not only does it teach you programming, but it actually probably takes you through some real world life lessons.
Awful bosses, basically.
Awful bosses. All right. I've had 1 or 2 of those in my career, so I may want to play with that game as well. Fantastic. Well, I want to get right into our topic here that we're going to be talking about. And your background really bodes well to speaking to sales leaders, marketing leaders, enablement folks. And you and I have talked a lot about this, or excuse me, we talk a lot about this in terms of digital and social and emerging technologies. Your book is coming out. And in fact, I'm going to be delivering a keynote in the coming weeks. And the title of that keynote is Borders, Kodak, Blockbuster, Are You Next? And I'm super excited about it because this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I know you are too. The world has seen some seismic changes. In fact, I know you've heard of this one, but we just saw a major, horrific, horrible announcement with one of the most iconic retail chains that you and I as kids grew up with. And it'd be great to get your viewpoint on what's happening. You know about the whole Toys R Us thing going on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
30,000 people whose jobs and lives would be forever changed. It's seismic changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I hate talking about this, when we talk about the taxi industry and what Uber has done, and we talk about, some of the other brands like Borders and Kodak, the lives have been changed, and Toys R Us is, no different, right? And thinking about those brands, or any brands for that matter, or the industry, is there one seismic change that has happened, or is it a series of events that has happened and or happening?
This is the relentless drumbeat of progress, because you can start with the Industrial Revolution and go back to steam engines and railroads and computing technologies, internet, social, any of these technologies that have come along. This is inevitable. It's change and it's constant. And yet some companies are able to reinvent themselves and others are not. And that's the interesting thing that I wanted to research. Like, what allows GE to constantly reinvent themselves? What allowed Nokia to go from making rubber boots to becoming a telecom company with handsets, and then in their latest reinvention, become an internet and communications company? They completely flipped what they were doing.
Right.
Sold off the handset business and bought a whole bunch of new companies to become reborn again. So what is it that allows people to do that? And for every Borders, there's a Barnes & Noble. For every Blockbuster, there's a Netflix that has continually reinvented itself. Mm-hmm. Red envelopes to content provider. Who would have thought, right? And so some companies are able to do this really well. And my research is looking at, so what can you do to make sure that your company is around? It may not look the same, though. It may not be the same business. And frankly, if you're doing it right, you probably are going to look very different 5-10 years from now, if you're doing it right.
So give me an idea, as you've done this research, and I'm sorry, you coined the term, I heard you say it, you said, I like to call this
relentless drumbeat of progress.
Relentless drumbeat of progress. I like that. And sometimes I think if you were to talk to probably leaders within some of the organizations like the Toys R Us, like the Blockbusters and the Borders, I think many of these leaders would probably say that they felt like that they were driving towards a progressional step of change. Is it organizations aren't changing fast enough? Are they not seeing it? Or is it a combination of not addressing it, not seeing it, and not changing fast enough? What is it?
I think it's a combination of they know what they need to do, they don't believe they're capable of doing it. And I hear this over and over again. So if you talk to people at Toys R Us or any of the retailers, they go, we know what's on the horizon. We know Amazon's out there. We know all these other players are waiting to eat our lunch. We know what we need to do, but that would mean completely changing our business. It would mean foregoing the profits that we already have and going after a new business that we're not comfortable with. And I'll point to Walmart as a great example of this. Walmart, big, huge target on its back, right? World's largest retailer, Amazon coming straight at it. And they go, we see you, Amazon, and we're going to raise the ante. So they go and buy Jet.com. They go and buy all these different companies, and they're saying, let's bring it. We're going to go head to head against you. And we have our physical stores, and we have all the supply chains locked up. So Amazon, you want to come fight on our turf? We welcome it. We're going to come and fight on your turf too. So how are they changing their strategies, their leadership, and their culture for this future fight that they anticipate? Their competition isn't Target, it's Amazon.
Interesting. You mentioned the Walmart and Amazon. I heard, and then this was last year in 2017, that Walmart was actually going out and renegotiating all of its contracts with its suppliers and saying, "Thou shall not do business. We have an exclusive. And if you do, we will cut you out of our Walmart stores." And they targeted it, the high revenue producing suppliers, so that it would almost break them at the knees if they did any business with Amazon. And whether or not you think the business practice is good or not, fact of the matter is to your point, they were like, bring it. You think you can come after me, Amazon? Bring it, right? Let's change the game, change the model, and make sure that we are locking down our business and our suppliers so that they can't go do business with somebody else.
So again, I think there are different strategies that you can have and compete against, especially if you have some natural competitive advantages like physical stores. And Amazon's thinking, I need a physical store. So what do? Buy Whole Foods. Beginning to put distribution centers into potential partners, building stores themselves. It's a really interesting time and place to be active in the business world because you have so many different competitors and everybody is trying to build a platform. But the thing that I found in my research is that the companies who are able to consistently reinvent themselves, and I consider people like Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, Google, even Microsoft now, the thing that they do really well, and they have completely different strategies. What they do really well is they focus on customers, and they're obsessed about customers, but not today's customers. They think about tomorrow's customers, the customers of the future. I call them the next generation customers. And that's a really interesting and difficult place to be because pinning down a customer that doesn't exist and then having the leadership that can align everybody against that. And you're basically saying to your salespeople from a sales perspective, yeah, go make your targets for today, but go and spend significant time understanding your new customers, the future, and you will get no money from them today. But it is essential to our future. But what sales is, it's really about not just meeting the quarterly goals. The best companies, I think, who are doing selling today, understand selling not just by the quarter, but against the whole entire lifetime of that customer and the life cycle for the company.
Yeah, I do agree with you on looking at the customer of the future and seeing how to adapt. But we think about like so many different presentations we've heard, and I think leaders maybe have gotten maybe a little numb to this, and salespeople as well. The buyer's changed more in the last 2 years than it has in the last 5 or last 10. They're social, they're this or that. They're doing their self-paced research. I mean, there's like a bazillion different stats that out there that kind of prove that. But here's my question to you: are leaders listening? Are leaders doing what it takes? And I say leaders, I want to put this in the context of sales leadership. And I'm going to tell you, I literally speak to executives. I do about 100 plus executive meetings per year. And I still get 70% of the executives say to me, can you prove out the ROI of having my folks leverage digital to engage with a buyer? And it blows my mind. Like, it blows my mind that someone is asking me that question in the 2018 era. Like, why is that a problem?
I sit down with people, and amazingly at tech companies, right? Tech companies who say, the social thing, it's all gossip. It's all gossip. It's useless. It's not real business being done. And I'm sort of going, how do you do this? It was the sales leader and the support leader. The marketing person was totally on board, but the sales team, like, useless. Support even saying nothing happens on social. None of our customers are on social. Talking about our business, and go, you're a B2B technology company. They're definitely here. So I think it's partly denial because they don't want to bother doing this. They're looking for ROI, which is, again, very difficult to ever ascertain anyways across any of your activities, let alone social. But fundamentally, I go back to this. If your customers are on these channels, are you listening to them? Are you actually going out there and seeing if they are there? Actively doing this, and not just once, but continually, because you can't assume that they're not there.
Right.
So even if they're not there, at least you've done your best effort, and it takes almost no effort to find people when they're talking about your products, your businesses, your industry, and your space. Right. So I think of listening as the foundation. And great listening is the foundation of great sales. If you do not listen, you cannot do sales.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I see happening in the world of sales. And I've said this, and I'll continue to say this. selling today is harder than it's ever been, in my opinion. And this is my 21st year in sales. I started out as a telemarketer, AKA now called SDR or BDR, whatever you want to call it, right? And I was doing both inbound and outbound leads, right? So it is much more difficult because we've got overwhelmed buyers from a content perspective. We've got bigger buying groups. We've got deals that on the sales side that are stalled because of no decision being made or budget types of challenges. We've got other types of challenge for salespeople is like, I can't figure out how to get to my buyer because they don't pick up the phone. They are not responding to email. My email goes into spam. I can't get them on LinkedIn because they're not socially active. Like, it is a tough world out there right now. And leaders are asking that question, like, well, are my buyers on social and are they digitally connected? And I'm going to give you my definition of this thing called digital. And I want you to tell me, what do you think about it? I think the word social selling is like, I hate the term. And it's a component of where a buyer might be. I like to use the Omnichannel. And this is where a seller is engaging with across all channels, whether that's video, whether that's text, whether that's phone, whether that's email, whether that's social, whether that's a phone conversation, whatever it might be. There are at least 6 different ways. And don't forget, shaking their hand at a networking event and asking for a referral, right? How do we as sales leaders deal with that? We know that there's change, but yet we ourselves are not bought in on. What's the mindset shift that we have to take to really move past beyond, should I have my sales folks there? What needs to click, Charlene?
I go back to customer obsession. You're either obsessed with your customers and your prospects or you're not. It's that simple. And if you're not, you ask those questions. If you are, you never ask those questions. It's a total giveaway. Because if you are totally customer obsessed, you would do everything possible to find wherever your customers are, no matter which channel they're in, no matter where they are, you will track them down and be there for them. It is not to sell them, you're there for them. And anything short of that, they can tell. You can see it. You can see when somebody is just going through the motions, sending you a group email versus making the effort to understand who you are, where you are in the process, understand where you're coming from, where you're headed towards. And doing everything possible to use technology and digital to scale your efforts and your understanding of that. So I kind of see it as a total cop-out to say, like, what do I really need to do this? And go, yeah, if your customers are there and you are truly, truly interested and obsessed with them, you wouldn't ever be asking this question.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to quote a stat, and it's not from Altimeter, but it's from CEB. And I recently saw this, and I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting about the portion of time that is spent on key buying activities. And so they surveyed, a bazillion buyers, and it showcased that 17% of the whole buying cycle by these B2B buyers is spent on meeting with potential suppliers. Now, if you think about this, on average, there's probably 3 competitors that you might have, and generally they're probably going to talk to maybe a couple, if not more, in terms of the capability sets. So if you were to think about of that 17% and divide it by 3, just 3 competitors, you're getting 5% of the buying time face to face and through a phone conversation with a buyer. So where else would you go, and what else do you do to get in front of your buyers?
This is all about pre-qualifications. And everything is done digitally, the research and everything, and it's not done by the stakeholders, but against these larger buying teams. There are people low down at the front edge of the totem pole. So how do you make sure you're talking to them? You've got to attract them to you. So one of the things we do at Altimeter, and I was saying that I love to sell, one of the things we did and realized is that we had analysts who don't necessarily sell very well. So how do we pre-qualify everybody to sell a very specific set of capabilities that we have, because we make our money through consulting and speaking. So we said, we're going to solve only a specific set of problems that we can do really well. Only we can do it. And we'll do a design thinking approach to our research so that all of our leads came in inbound, so 90% inbound. But because they were pre-qualified from the content, we had an incredibly high close rate, like 80, 90%. So our goal was to be 90% inbound, 90% close rates.
Yeah.
Because then I'm maximizing the time of the analysts who write research and deliver and not spent on marketing and selling. So when I say I love selling, it is about making sure that we're reaching the people, identifying the problems that we can solve. Not every problem, but the specific problems that we can sell, and then hyper serving that customer and being completely obsessed with that person we're trying to help.
So when you look at this in the world of the sales, on the sales side, not the buying side, but on the sales side, are you saying then that for sales leaders to really succeed and for sales teams to really succeed, that they, along with the marketing team, need to figure out what they do really, really well and go after that and bring in content that surrounds that particular aspect?
Yeah, and I would also include support, because support is a key part in prospects process, but also with your existing customers and new buying centers. But it is all about brand and marketing. What will you be famous for? How will you differentiate yourself? What's your value proposition? Marketing, sales, support, it all has to be aligned and singing from the same song page. So no matter who comes and talks to that person, to that prospect or that customer, it is exactly the same experience. So I think about the sales experience, the marketing experience, the customer experience for them. They don't know where you sit. They don't know what your role is.
Right.
You have different roles, but you feel like you are the center of the universe whenever you touch the company. There's nothing better than that you feel like you're understood and you're known. If you're known, you will buy.
Yeah. Do you think, another question for you here on the world of selling and the world of buying, do you think that buyers using digital sources through their buyer's journey, and I'm going to define buyer's journey as, let's just call it, for lack of a simplicity's sake, the purchase stage, early, middle, and late, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. Do you think it changes across generations? Is this like a millennial thing versus the Gen Xers versus the boomers? Or is everyone pretty much buying this way from a B2B perspective, and they're utilizing online digital sources and channels to be able to go through that buying purchase?
Everyone is using these channels to different levels and degrees. So clearly, if you're younger, you're more facile, you're more comfortable doing a lot more of your work in digital channels. You're used to calling up your friends, literally looking up your personal network. Has anybody ever done this? And they'll just ask it on their Facebook friends. They're also just as reluctant, though, to use places like LinkedIn for business, because they're used to using things from a personal perspective, but professionally, how to express themselves, they're just as much of a loss as older generations. We see a lot of correlations in terms of everybody using it for information sourcing and research. It decreases when it comes to sharing, and when it comes to engaging, it decreases even more by generation. But there is excitement and reluctance across every single generation. I can point to as many 70 and 80-year-olds who are doing this, using these tools, and happily doing it. Like, it's the most natural thing for them to do. And just as likely, I can point to 20-year-olds who go, I don't want to go anywhere near this. And they sound like they're boomers. So like, are you really 25? Because you sound like an 85-year-old right now. So you count all parts. It has more to do with your mindset about how you think about developing relationships.
Yeah. And I remember I was sitting in a presentation with Gartner, and they were talking about B2B buying and the difference between like millennials versus, interestingly enough, boomers, right? And how the percentage points was, throughout the whole entire buying purchase phase, early, the middle, the late phase of the buying process. Like, millennials were using digital 95+% of the way throughout the whole entire process. And boomers were like at the 86th percentile. And then as it dropped down into the late phase, it only dropped down to like 68%. And Gen Xers was like a little bit over 80+%. So the reality is to your point, it doesn't matter the age of the individual. Digital channels are in fact a way that people are engaging, whether we like it or not.
I look at it this way, even though the numbers are really low, it was like 10%, 20%, but your buyer is there. Would you ignore it?
That's a great point.
This is the way I think about it. If you had somebody knocking on your door, you had somebody calling you on the phone, you would answer the door, you would pick up the phone, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why don't we do this in the digital channels? There are literally customers knocking on the door and saying, let me in. I want to know more about you. And you're saying, I can't be bothered?
I'm going to use your illustration, and I'm going to go off on a whim here and say, wait a minute, leaders are doing that on the traditional channel. Think about this. We know that less than 10% of all calls are being answered. Proven case studies, tell you study after study after study after study after study, right? Less than 10% are being answered. Yet, if we're not making our number, what do? We call more, right? Yeah. We put another blitz day in place, right? And so to your point, only 10% of the buyers are engaged on that channel, yet we put all of our resources in that channel.
Yeah. And you just cited me numbers that were completely different for digital channels. And we put no resources against that.
Exactly.
So I kind of go, this is us going back to things that we're comfortable with that has gotten us results in the past. And we don't recognize that if we haven't made our number for the quarter, a last minute push is not going to help you very much. You get maybe 1 or 2 sales. And we all know that. You're just doing the Hail Mary pass at that point. Whereas if you were to keep that low, again, steady drumbeat of connections with people, and I spend so much time just nurturing those relationships. The people who love digital and social channels, these omnichannel approach, are relationship obsessed. They understand the power of relationships. They invest in relationships knowing it may not pay off this quarter, but eventually this person will call me because they know what they can come to me for. I have helped them in the past. They know I can help them, and they're just not ready to buy. I get asked this question by salespeople: how can I get people to buy? How can I move them faster along that process to freeing up the budget and then buying? And I go, you can't. All you can do is heighten the pain so that they will buy faster. You can heighten the possible solution and the benefits of that. That's the only thing. You can't actually make somebody buy. And so I go back to pipeline. I go back to relationships. The bigger that you can make that pipeline, the bigger you can make your pool of relationships, and then scale it with all these digital tools and channels, because you have only so much time as a salesperson. You have only so much time as an executive. So use the digital tools to scale your ability to form deep relationships with people.
No, that's brilliant advice. And I love the illustration. I may have to steal this from you. And it was to make sure that you have a steady drumbeat, right?
You think about drip and nurturing, right? The most powerful tools that we have in marketing are marketing automation. So give marketing automation tools to every single salesperson. Mm-hmm. Nurture people across every channel. And it's not just email. Marketing automation has historically been email, but all of them also support posting into social channels. Mm-hmm. So how do you figure out what content makes sense? Do you put down everything that everybody else is doing, or do you talk about something that you have a perspective on and you're known for and you can help your customers? Like, this is something I'm really, really good at. And it's a pain point because I put it in front of you, my customer, because I think it's relevant to you. That's really hard to do right now, given a lot of the content systems that people have, the marketing automation and time, the things that have. There's some studies that show that salespeople spend a third of their time looking for the right content to send to somebody. Yeah. There are so many things we can do on the marketing and sales operations side to make things a lot easier for our salespeople, in terms of understanding that this is that person in that journey and this is the right content to give to that person and putting that right in front of that person at that point. So there's a lot of heavy lifting that digital can do, but you have to be able to ask for that as a sales executive, to align your operations team, get marketing to give you the content, and to have this really strong connection and to support, because they're a huge generator of pain points that you can sell against. And we never think about support as a sales channel, but it is one of the most powerful places to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. And to that end, I was just at a meeting today, and there was an organization from the EU that came out, and they're in the digital selling world, and they asked if they can meet with me. And, I walked in, I couldn't really tell from the picture what they really looked like. And so I walk in and they're like, Mario, Mr. Social Selling, right? And I'm like, well, actually, I'd rather have you known as Mr. Digital Selling, but that's a different conversation. Nonetheless, we spent some time talking, and it was interesting to me that as we went down this path of some of the things that are taking place, one of the common issues that we hear is, I just don't know what to put out and what to share, right? And here's my question to you is what is marketing's role in trying to help make it easy for me when I'm looking at the awareness phase versus the middle of the funnel phase versus the closing phase. How can I have content that is aligned to that and make it easy, as opposed to I'm going to go sift through all of our YouTube content and sift through all of our blog content and sift through all of any other piece of research, case study, whatever material we've got. I just can't do that as a salesperson. So what is marketing's job in helping sales leaders, or what should sales leaders say to their marketing peers? You need to do, and you fill in the blank.
Marketing keeps saying, well, what does sales want? What does sales want? And sales goes, what should we be doing? So it's kind of like each are looking to each other for the answer, right? Blind leading the blind. Horrible situation to be at. I look at it this way. Sales has one huge advantage of marketing doesn't. You talk to clients every day. You talk to customers every single day. You're not a good salesperson if you don't talk to a customer at least once a day, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking to customers every day. You understand what their pain points are. Tell marketing, these are the pain points I need to address. These are the top 10, 5, 3 pain points, and I need content that addresses point A, B, and C. And tag those for me. And so this is not about sales cycle. It's also too high level. I've got customer A who has this pain point, customer B has this pain point, and I need content that can address those pain points because I see them over and over and over again. They're usually about 10 different pain points.
So funny you mentioned that. So I was in a 2-day training program that we were delivering to one of our clients, and we got to the section on sharing content. And we did this exercise in work groups. And after about 25 minutes, there were some really phenomenal ideas that came up by salespeople and saying, if we had this and we had this type of document with this type of message, we believe that our customers would love it because they've been asking us. And marketing stood up in front of the room saying, hallelujah, we'll build it. And guys, how long have I been asking you guys, what do you need? And it's like the deer in the headlight, right? Well, I don't know what I need. Well, specifically, the marketing person said, I've been asking you, what are the top 5 questions that you hear out on a sales appointment, right? And a lot of that feedback is not getting back to the marketing organization. So what it made me realize was salespeople should be documenting great questions that they wish they had a one-pager on, or a blog article, or a video, or a whatever, and get that back to their marketing department. And it's a must-do in the world of sales and marketing alignment.
And here's my thing. In many cases, the salespeople know exactly what should be on there, right? So why don't they do a little video or a little blog post? Little, not something big. And I think this is the real power of digital, is that as salespeople, you don't have to wait for marketing to do this. You can actually create this. And it's your face, your name, your words on that piece of content. And you create 10 pieces of content because you know what those 10 pain points are. And then you can back it up with a white paper once marketing produces it. But why are you waiting? Your customer needs an answer now. And you know what the answer is. Get your phone on a little stand, put it inside some sort of like diva light, and just record yourself doing this. This is not that hard, right? And so it's kind of like, let's just reduce the stakes here. If the customer was sitting here, what would you say to them? Yeah, well, I don't know exactly what I would say to them. Okay, now just pretend the customer's sitting here and say it to them. Give me 2 minutes of it. I look at it this way. If, again, you believe that your job as a salesperson is to help that customer, to do everything possible because you're obsessed with them, you will not let a little thing like, how do I make a recording on my phone, stop you from doing this. You will absolutely run towards this and not be afraid of it.
You are 100% right. And it was funny. You and I are so aligned. I love what you're saying, because recently I'm talking to an individual who said, I can't get what I'm needing for. And so they came to me and they said, would you do some coaching with me? And I said, absolutely. So we said, why don't you create 2-minute videos? Oh, well, I don't know if I can create a 2-minute video. Well, here's what you do. Go to Amazon for $50. You buy the little green screen that sticks onto your chair, right? If you want to do something nice, you download an app called OneMob. You buy a little mini D, which costs $11. It's an 11-inch tripod stand. Put your phone on the mini D, sit in front of it, and record a 2-minute long video answering their question. And oh, by the way, when you answer their question, you might want to throw it on LinkedIn native video so everybody else can hear the answer too, right? And it was amazing because it was like, well, wow, I guess I didn't realize how easy it was. Yes, yes. Use your channels to create discussion. For God's sakes, if you can email the prospect, why can't you put a video together in front of them, right? And create your own answer to the question, especially because I'm not a writer. I hate writing. I'd rather record video than actually write. You know what I mean? Like, it's like there's no more excuses that are left in the book.
Do not write if you're not a writer, right? And I have yet to meet a salesperson who couldn't talk, right? We love to talk. We love to hear ourselves talking. And I keep going back to, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you want to put out more stuff that could help people, help your customers, help the people who are in your network? And I think, again, they think that this technology stuff is hard. And so in my work with companies, I go, do not focus on the technology, focus on the relationships, because that is the thing that will drive us forward. If you're a sales leader, think about the relationships your salespeople want with you even. What kind of coaching? How would you actually monitor what they do? So we talk about culture, and culture is how we get work done around here. How many of them are actually posting on LinkedIn? How many of them are using it? Can you track that activity? And if they're not using it, get on them. Oh, you don't even know how to use it. Mm-hmm. So there's this sort of cascading approach. And I do, again, find that the best salespeople are relationship focused. They're not sales focused. The best relationship people are the best salespeople across the board in every single industry. Doesn't matter. The top salespeople, top 2% are just relationship obsessed. I think those are the people who are, you look at every single person who's really good at using digital, this omnichannel approach, they're relationship obsessed.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I was presenting to a room of sales and marketers at a venture capital private equity event, and they had all their portfolio companies inside the room. And I asked a question. I said, how many of you, before you interview somebody, before they walk into your office, how many of you look at their LinkedIn profile in addition to their resume? 100% of the executive leaders, there was all VPs of sales and VPs of marketing and above, 100% of everyone raised their hand and said, yes, I do. I look at their LinkedIn profile. And I said, fantastic. What are you looking for? They're like, well, what type of person are they? Are they actually publishing any content? Do they have any thought leadership? Or do they know how to use the Omnichannel or the social channels? Does their resume match their actual LinkedIn profile? Or are they, elevating themselves on LinkedIn, right? Oh, great. I said, that's great. Yeah, it's exactly what you want to do. Here's then what I said. What makes you think they're not looking at you for all the same reasons? And it was like an aha moment because they were like, well, you're right. I'm like, so you don't have any content. You don't have any activity. You don't have a single post. You don't talk about what the culture is like in the company and what it's like to work for. You don't even have any recommendations of people who have worked for you to say what type of leader you are, that you care about them, that you're going to accelerate their career, that you're going to help them take the next level. So for God's sakes, why would they want to work for you? And I just think it's, this ideology, and I would love to get your opinion on this from a culture standpoint, that we have this viewpoint that salespeople need to be doing this. But as leaders, do we also need to be doing these types of things as well? And I think you answered the question. I think I know what you're going to answer, but what are your thoughts on that?
Leadership is all about credibility. And you are a credible leader because you do what you say, you deliver on the things that you do, you come through for people in good times and in bad. It's all about credibility and trust and relationships. So leadership is just a simple relationship between the people who aspire to leader and people who are inspired to follow them. So I kind of go back to, how can you ask people to do these things when you don't do them yourself? And again, I think the best leaders are the ones who have this really interesting mix of confidence and humility. And the two of those things are almost at odds to each other, and they're actually not. Humility says, I'm constantly on a journey to learn. I am constantly trying to improve myself. And I can't ask other people to do things that I wouldn't do myself. Those are the best leaders. And we know and we recognize and admire those people tremendously. And so when it comes to this digital transformation stuff, we have long been at Altimeter focused on the human aspects of digital transformation, because it is all about people. It's all about culture and about how we as leaders approach this. Leadership and culture. It's not about technology.
I love it.
Yeah, we think it's technology. Technology is the impetus and the catalyst, in many ways, the outcome of what you do. But the whole part of the transformation part and the part that's hard is leadership and culture and people.
You hit the nail on the head. And on that note, my final closing thought on the leadership piece is we literally just took on another client, and the most amazing thing happened. It was a very successful mid-sized company. The owner is 74 years old, and he sat through a 2-day training. He did not have a LinkedIn profile when he walked into the meeting. By the time that the program was done, in terms of our training program, our digital sales training program, his final comments were, guys, we have thousands of customers that we are not connecting with. We shouldn't even have to prospect. All we should be doing is connecting and getting referrals from these clients. And the great part about it is today, as of today, he's leading the entire sales organization with the highest growth of new connections into the network. And it's just the most amazing thing. A 74-year-old guy like figured it out, and he's just like, I'm on this train.
Yeah, and for him, it's not digital or sales. It's about connections and networks and relationships. He gets it. He gets it. My favorite boomer example of this is Bill Marriott Sr., who is, I think, 85. He doesn't know how to type. He doesn't even barely use his computer, but he blogs every week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he's got a story to tell.
Yeah.
He's going to be a leader. And he uses this medium as a way to be a leader. So I kind of go back to, you don't have to do everything, but you need to have thought about this very strategically. And I'll say one other thing before we close. I think leadership, and especially in digital space, what you were talking about, especially if your company is going through a lot of change, it requires a different type of leadership. I think about it as disruptive leadership. What you're actually creating is a movement. You've got to create a vision and a purpose to get people through this transition time. Transformation is really difficult. So you literally need to say, this is our objective, this is where we're heading, and nothing will stop us. There's a sense of purpose and mission, but more importantly, a sense of movement that people can belong to and join and go, I am a part of that movement. I have raised my hand. And so no matter how many people say, this is horrible, it's going wrong, you're like, but it's okay, we're in a movement. We'll figure it out when we just keep going. That's a very different type of leadership. And I think salespeople think, okay, let's go, let's meet the quarter and everything. If that is the extent of your leadership in terms of sales, it will not be enough, because meeting the number is not enough. That mission has to be bigger than yourself. It has to be focused externally. Like, what is the change you want to see? And constantly doing that. I look at the civil rights movement, I have a dream. I even look at Trump, pro-Trump or anti-Trump, whichever way you want to look at it, make America great again. The Trumpists, the Trump supporters, nothing can dissuade them. Nothing can ever move them off of their belief that this is the right approach for America.
Right.
That's a movement. And I look at that, Obama's, change movement, Nelson Mandela leading movements from behind a prison wall.
Yeah.
This is totally the kind of things that we want to belong to. So insurmountable goals, impossible goals. Let's say, let's double our sales next year. Let's double our sales. We're not going to be satisfied with 20% growth, but let's aim for 20%, 2x. And how do we do things really, really differently to get that kind of exponential growth? That's disruption. What sales leader would sign up for that?
I would.
Right? But you would configure your strategy. You would do everything differently if you were aiming to grow 2x than if you were aiming to go 20%. And that is what a disruptive organization does. Okay, we won't grow 2x. We know we won't, but we'll do everything possible. And maybe we'll go 50%, but that'll be better than the 20% growth. Even 20% growth sounds really hard. We're adding a couple of zeros to this. It's insane. But, if you're going to go for some really big targets, may as well make them really, really big and challenge yourself to say, what do customers need today? Is the potential there for us to double our growth next year because we can identify what that need is and we can meet it?
On that note, isn't this some of the topics what your new book is going to be about?
absolutely is. Yes.
Can you tell us what the title is or not yet?
The working title is called The Disruptor's Agenda. So how do you systematically create a strategy for disruption that results in exponential growth and value?
The Disruptor's Agenda. I love it. Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I have a question for you. If people want to follow you or get in contact with you, is that through Twitter? Should they follow you on LinkedIn? Can they connect with you? What is the best way to?
I am omnichannel. I'm on every channel. So whatever works for you. Usually I'm Charlene Li on whatever channel. So whenever something new comes up, I go and get my handle. So Charlene Li on every channel, and my blog is charleneli.com.
I love it. And before we close out here, I have a question for you. I'd love to know, and our listeners love to know, what's your favorite all-time movie?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Huh?
I have watched it, I think, 25 times. I just love that movie. It makes me happy. It's silly. It's just a throwback. Again, I watch it at different points in my life, and every single time, I just love it.
Is that the one with the monkey brains?
No, that's I don't think so.
That's another one.
That's the Temple of Doom, which is awful.
Temple of Doom. There we go. All right, Raiders of the Lost Ark it is. Charlene, it's fantastic having you on Selling with Social. Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com. VENGRESO.com. And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social.